Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Here's what's making news right now.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time when this would have been like, are you kidding? You want us to do all of that before we could cross the border? And now we're like, hey, this is great. It's so much easier. It's really crazy the way your perspective changes.
It would be devastating to our farm, for sure.
We've seen Canadians really respond quite generously. We know that, the Canadian population has quite a large Ukrainian, population, and people have been responding very generously so far, and we look forward to continued support.
Thanks for joining us. Beginning today, it'll be a bit less of a hassle to cross the Canada-U.S. border. Rapid antigen test results are now being accepted when entering this country. While some politicians, businesses, and tourism leaders want these requirements dropped altogether, for people who cross to see loved ones, they say it means they finally get to reconnect with family. The CBC's Jason Vio brings us the story.
After 2 years of not seeing their family across the border in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, 9-year-old Lexington and 11-year-old Liam of LaSalle are reunited.
A very happy moment, like some tears, happy tears, right? But no, they were excited. They don't want to even go home anymore, but now they have school and everything. But yeah, it was very exciting, very joyful moment.
Their dad, William Pangilinan, says the reason they're crossing over now is because rapid antigen tests can be used to return to Canada. It's less of a hassle compared to PCR tests that took much longer.
We were kind of planning this for a very long time, just waiting for the restrictions to loosen up.
Rapid antigen tests must be done within 24 hours of re-entering Canada, and Pangilinan says it wasn't hard to set it up. Plus, he found a free option at a U.S. pharmacy.
We actually got ours this morning, and it only took about an hour to get.
Even for people like Lauren Hedges and her boyfriend Phil Stewart, these new rules mean they'll see each other more often.
Before, there was no point going for less than a day and a half because that's how long you'd have to wait just to get your test results. So it really does open things up a fair bit for us.
Hedges lives in Windsor while Stewart lives in Harrison Township, Michigan. 2 years of border closures and restrictions have tested their relationship.
A year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, there was a point where we couldn't see each other at all. So we kind of take it as a point where any step forward in terms of leniency, going back and forth, is a step forward.
But border city mayors and national tourism organizations want to take another step forward. Last week, demanding the feds immediately stop the COVID testing altogether at land borders. They say it's pointless, obsolete, and offers a false sense of security. Today, the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit wouldn't give its opinion on the effectiveness of border testing.
I think the role of testing at the border and the role of rapid antigen testing as opposed to PCR, really, that's a risk-benefit decision, and that the commenting on that risk-benefit decision has to be deferred to the federal authorities.
For the Pangilinan family, they plan on crossing a lot more to reconnect with family they say they've missed for the past 2 years.
When COVID hit, the lockdown, and the 2 years, there was a very long time to not see a family member who you're so used to seeing every single day.
Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
Turning now to the Premier, hinting today that mask mandates will likely soon be dropped in Ontario.
I'm listening to the Chief Medical Officer. It's his advice when they're going to come off, and we'll wait for his advice and recommendations. And once he gives the recommendations, we'll be able to move forward. What I'm hearing over the next few weeks, maybe after March break, when the kids get back, but we'll see.
As of tomorrow, people across the province will be able to gather in indoor public settings with no capacity limits. The need to show proof of vaccination will also be lifted. The province today reported 850 COVID-19 hospitalizations with just under 300 people in intensive care with the disease. Three more deaths of people with the virus were reported, and the test positivity rate in the province right now is just under 9%. Michigan authorities have confirmed a strain of avian flu has been found in the state. It's led to the Detroit Zoo moving birds indoors, and locally, poultry farmers are taking precautions as well. Dale Molnar has more on what's happening this side of the border.
The bird flu can cause death in birds within hours. The chickens, ducks, geese, and other fowl on Nicole Winkle's Essex County hatchery farm are free range, so they are susceptible to coming in contact with wild birds. So she's taking precautions.
It's mainly the wild waterfowl that we want to watch out for because they can be carriers and not have any symptoms. So we're just, we have water at the back that we're going to be draining as soon as it melts to prevent any wild waterfowl flying in. We don't have any of our bird feeders out. We want to try and keep the wild birds away.
Winkles had been planning to open up the farm to tours in the spring and putting birds out to pasture, but those plans are now on hold.
I have to make sure that I'm very diligent with what footwear I wear off the property, because if I go to the local feed store to pick up feed, I want to make sure that I'm wearing shoes that haven't been, in the barn or anything like that. And any person that comes on the property to pick up, say, chicks or eggs or anything like that, I make sure they don't pass a certain point so that they're not tracking anything into close range where the chickens are.
Josh Mayu raises 24,000 tom turkeys at his farm in Amherstburg. He has already been taking precautions.
We change our boots. We walk through a calcitic lime, which helps sterilize the boots. We change our coveralls. We have hand sanitizer in the rooms, and then we also limit the traffic. My cousin Chad, on a daily basis, he does most of the chores.
An outbreak at his farm could cost him over $100,000. So there is an insurance program the Canadian government is offering that he pays into.
We pay into it on a per kilo basis. When we get paid for our birds, it's deducted off the price of the birds, obviously. But it is to set up some compensation for loss to avian influenza.
So far, Mayu says the bird flu has not affected any local poultry producers. Poultry farmers expect they will have to deal with this bird flu concern until at least May. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Amherstburg.
To international news now. It's been a busy day of diplomacy as world leaders scramble in a bid to end the war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, in Kiev, the curfew has ended, but scattered fighting continues. CBC's Salima Shivji has the latest on the conflict.
A tense calm settled over Kyiv as day broke. A brief break in fighting and a weekend curfew lifted meant long lines outside grocery stores. The desperation ever present. My child is 3 years old and she's far away, this mother says. We can't pick her up because we're under fire. Even after getting in, many shelves were empty, with supplies limited. Some Ukrainians who tried to leave the capital ended up coming back, determined to fight.
No, I'm not really afraid. I believe the world is on our side, and we were attacked. It's not our aggression.
The aggression on display in the outskirts of the capital and in Kharkiv, Ukraine's second biggest city, a barrage of rockets seemingly targeting residential buildings. Ukraine's defiant president was clear about what he wants: a stronger bond with Europe, full membership in the European Union. I'm sure it's fair, I'm sure we deserve it, Volodymyr Zelensky said, as he also directed a message to the Russian fighters advancing on his cities. Drop your weapons and leave, he said. Don't believe your commanders, don't believe your propaganda. All this as talks between the Russians and the Ukrainians got underway on the Belarus border. Both sides left without an agreement to end the conflict, but with a promise to meet again. And again today, more international pressure on Russia, further sanctions against the country's central bank. And Switzerland, too, putting aside its traditional neutrality.
Inacceptable sur le plan politique, inacceptable d'un point de vue moral.
Sided with Europe and adopted the same sanctions, freezing billions of dollars in Russian assets. With the ruble in freefall, the pressure on the Russian economy grows with every passing day. Salima Shivji, CBC News, London.
Russia's attack on Ukraine has triggered a mass exodus of refugees. More than 1 million people, mostly women, children, and the elderly, have already fled to neighboring countries. But there are many, thousands more, who are still desperately trying to escape the conflict. Susan Ormston reports from near the Ukraine border with Poland.
We're here in Ukraine, Western Ukraine, and this lineup of cars is people trying to get to the Polish border. It stretches down this way for at least 20 kilometers. We've talked to many people waiting in their cars. They've been sitting in their cars, sleeping in their cars, inching forward for 4 to 5 days. So you sleep for 10 minutes, then you have to move the car forward.
Да, да. Big car, stop. 10, 12 minutes.
It's terrible.
Catastrophe.
4 days ago, there were only 50,000 Ukrainians who had fled the country. Today, the UN Refugee Agency says it's 500,000, and they just keep coming. The stories here, people sleeping for 10 minutes, then inching up a little further. A woman told me it took 1 day to go 2 kilometers. Some of them are from Lviv, about 60 kilometers down this way, others from Kyiv. They've all been trying for days to flee the war, and they're desperate to go out. Most of them women and children, as men between ages 18 and 60 are to stay in Ukraine to help fight. This refugee crisis is growing by the day. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, near the Polish-Ukrainian border in Ukraine.
Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly announced today that Canada will be sending a third shipment of weapons to Ukraine. She says she'll be meeting with her Polish counterpart tomorrow and heading to Poland's border with Ukraine. Joly says Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a serious violation of the UN Charter, and she had strong words for the Russian government.
We demand, in the name of humanity, that Putin's Russia end this madness. The world is watching, and future generations will remember how we confronted this moment. Russia's invasion of Ukraine makes the work of protecting human rights even more urgent.
And one way Canadians are responding to the situation in Ukraine is by donating to charities that are helping the people who live there. Canada Helps is an online portal that lists 18 different Canadian charities doing just that. And as Canadians donate, the group is cautioning to be careful who you donate to, adding it is safest to give to charities that are approved by the Canada Revenue Agency.
Making a donation on CanadaHelps.org, you can be assured that all of the charities listed there are registered organizations with the Canada Revenue Agency. So they have to follow strict CRA guidelines. So donors can be rest assured that their donations are being used effectively.
Several of the charities listed on the site have raised in the tens of thousands of dollars for people in Ukraine, including Save the Children Canada with more than $67,000, including the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Canada with nearly $100,000, and supporting older people in the Ukraine crisis put on by Help Age Canada with nearly $25,000. And Anesi says some organizations like UNICEF are delivering emergency supplies, and smaller organizations like Global Medic in Toronto will be giving hygiene and food products to people affected in the area. The Ford government is bringing in a minimum wage for workers who drive for apps such as Uber and Lyft. But there's a catch that's leaving drivers less than impressed. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story.
In 300 meters, make a right turn on Adelaide Street West.
It's a job with almost no workplace protections, driving for platforms like Uber or delivering for such apps as DoorDash or Skip the Dishes. For months, the Ford government signaled it had the gig economy in its sights. Today, the Premier revealed the plan.
Legislation that would make Ontario the first province in Canada to establish a minimum wage and other important rights for the digital platform workforce.
Those other rights include a guarantee that tips will be protected and more clarity on how pay is calculated.
Every thing that Premier Ford and I are doing is about raising paychecks. I want people to have more take-home pay so they can build stronger families.
I took Uber to and from the announcement. Both of the drivers I rode with scoffed at the $15 an hour minimum wage. One of them said it won't help him in the slightest. The other called it garbage. Their big concern? The minimum wage would only apply to engaged hours. That's when the driver has a passenger or is making a delivery. When they're in between those times, they don't get paid at all. Jennifer Scott delivers in downtown Toronto for a number of apps.
If we're here and we're working and we're on shift and we have our bikes or our cars for our delivery bags, we should be paid from the time that we log into the app until we log out of the app.
Scott says applying the minimum wage only to engaged hours would be like only paying a cashier when they're actually ringing up sales. Uber Canada declined our request for an interview. In a statement, the company said its drivers already average more than $30 an hour during their engaged time.
Look, there's nothing preventing any corporation from paying their workers more. In fact, I encourage it.
The changes do not give app-based workers the full protections of Ontario's Employment Standards Act.
They should be able to have benefits. They should be able to apply for EI if they're out of work. They should be able to have wages that are appropriate, minimum wage, at the very least. There are just so many things that they should have paid sick days as well.
The Ford government is aiming to get the legislation passed by early May before Queen's Park dissolves for the election campaign. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
As pandemic restrictions ease, lawyers hope to see broadcasts of court proceedings continue. Ontario courts took many of their hearings online in 2020 because of COVID-19 restrictions. That didn't just allow for proceedings to take place online, it also allowed people to view trials from their homes. Some who have been advocating for cameras in courthouses for years hope it continues, even as restrictions ease.
So the courts were forced to use Zoom proceedings as a way for the public to be able to see. And as reluctant as they may have been, once it happened, all of the fears of what could happen evaporated very quickly.
The first jury trial that took place in Windsor since the beginning of the pandemic was last October. People were able to request to access that trial virtually. And most recently, media and others were able to watch as a Superior Court justice considered whether or not to grant an injunction against protesters blocking the Ambassador Bridge border crossing. One Windsor defense lawyer says giving people easier access to court proceedings gives them a better understanding of the court system, which is a good thing.
I do think it's genuinely good for society. I think that the amount of unfamiliarity that the average person has with the criminal justice system, it's startling sometimes. But just general familiarity with the process, I think, would help. And it may even help people understand why. I'm thinking, looking at you, Windsor Star comment section, why we get quote unquote lenient sentences for people who have addiction issues and commit property crimes, right? When you see these people and you hear them and you put a face to the name and a personality and a personal history to the name, it doesn't seem so crazy.
The provincial government says it is investing $65 million to expand access to video court hearings and ensure the latest technology is more widely available. And that will help speed up access to hearings and reduce the need for in-person visits. Let's take a live look outside there. That sun setting. Love seeing that live look. Partly cloudy tonight and then a chance of rain showers or flurries tomorrow. And Colette will be here after the break with your weather for the week. Stay with us. Working construction on the Ambassador Bridge usually means you're not afraid of heights, but I don't know about this. Take a look at that. Can you see you can see the worker on the bridge taking small steps. No. Colette. No, that's giving me anxiety watching it. Colette, how are you with heights? Because I don't think I could do that.
I'm terrible. And I think this is a common thing. The older you get, the worse it's gotten for me. And
There you go.
I don't even like to look at that because I know what it would feel like. So,
it stresses me. I did a bungee jump in Macau, and it was the tallest bungee jump in the world. Oh my goodness. And it took everything in me to convince myself to actually go through with it because it was terrifying. But now the idea of doing it again is like, no, that was another time. I don't need to go that high anymore.
Yeah, I'm happy. Let's keep my feet right here on the ground.
Exactly.
Let's do that. Let's show you what's going on here with our weather situation because, this is the kind of winter we've had, all the ups and downs with the temperatures. Yes, it is a concern on the roadways because it leads to potholes and it's making conditions poor that way as well. There's just so many facets to this. Well, here we are at -1, Chatham-Kent at -3. The temperature will be coming up a little more through the overnight hours and then kind of nearly steady there near the freezing mark. But we still have this wind chill to contend with. Well, that'll be disappearing too as the temperature continues to go up tomorrow into the higher single digits. Why? Because we're moving into the warm sector of this next system that's going to be rotating through. Now, ahead of the warm front, that's where they get some of this light snow, a few flurries of very wet flakes possible, but most of this is going to be off to the north and to the east as it moves through, primarily in the overnight hours and then into eastern Ontario, lingering into the day tomorrow. A lot of cloud cover left behind. I'm putting just a slim chance for could be a wet flurry, but really it would turn into a sprinkle. I think mostly we're just going to have some extra cloud cover, but as the temperature rises, you'll at least be able to enjoy the day, I think. And then we look ahead towards Wednesday, quiet in the morning, doesn't stay that way. Another system will sneak through. Now that one, it is showing us snow, but I think again, wet flurries kind of mixing with some light showers. So I put showers on your icon, you'll see on the 5-day forecast. But snowfall potential, yeah, it's all off towards the east, and it's not that significant with this one anyway. So there are those temperatures that don't change that much, but coming up a little bit in the overnight, they change a lot as we get through the day tomorrow and get into that new wind flow, and that's just going to help to push things up. So 8 degrees, and we don't have to deal with the snow or any of the precipitation associated with it. That sounds pretty good to me. Wednesday, this is why I think it'd be some rain showers pushing through, not a lot, and then there we go. Down go the temperatures as we get towards the end of the week, then back up again. It's quite the dance we've been doing this winter.
Yeah, indeed. All in all, though, I'll take that. Despite the rain, like those numbers, they look pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Tomorrow, I think there'll be some nice pockets to get out there and enjoy the day.
Oh, good.
For sure.
Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, we do have a new report on climate change that we need to tell you about, and it does come with a serious warning. So that's after the break. The United Nations climate science body is issuing its strongest warning yet about climate change. A report released today says global warming is a grave and mounting threat to our well-being and the overall health of the planet.
Today's IPCC report is an atlas of human suffering and a damning indictment of failed climate leadership. With fact upon fact, this report reveals how people and the planet are getting clobbered by climate change.
The report says the world faces unavoidable multiple climate hazards over the next 2 decades. Increased heat waves, floods, and droughts are pushing the habitable climate beyond its limits, leading to mass deaths of plants and animal life. Millions of people are now facing water and food shortages. Scientists also looked at the mental health effects from the threat of climate change. The report says younger generations feel increased anxiety about their future, and it calls on governments to address how to adapt to the current climate situation while reducing greenhouse gas emissions at the same time. Turning now to a lighter subject. Fat Tuesday is tomorrow, and some celebrate with pancakes, but Windsor, Detroit, we celebrate with punchki. And tomorrow we're going to take you along as some new Canadians get to sink their teeth into that tasty Polish treat. I'm so excited. We all need some positivity, some good things. So I think we're all excited about Punchki Day. I know I am. That is it for CBC Windsor News. Thank you so much for watching. For more news, go to cbc.ca/Windsor. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rick Mercer Report is up next. Have a great night.